Orrible, 32 years old, smart and resilient but once blinded by love, sat in a coffee, clutching a steaming cup of coffee, gearing up for an important day. Her phone buzzed. Andrew, her husband. She smiled, expecting a good luck wish, but his voice was ice cold. "I'm divorcing you. The house is sold. Lenora and I need the money." Lenora's mocking laughter echoed in the background, slicing into her like a knife. The coffee cup slipped, hot liquid splashing everywhere, Orrible's hands trembling. Who was Lenora? How dare Andrew sell the house, her blood and sweat? She bit her lip, tasting blood, but replied in a glacial tone, "Congratulations." What secrets lay in wait, and what would Orrible do to strike back at this betrayal? Orrible sat motionless in the coffee, the soft golden light from the overhead lamp casting a glow on her face, highlighting her deep brown eyes now clouded with a mist of emotion. The white porcelain cup that had slipped from her hand lay shattered on the floor, the coffee spreading out like a pool of thick black blood, steaming faintly. Tiny shards glimmered under the light, reflecting the devastation tearing through her chest. Andrew's voice from the phone call still echoed in her mind like a scratched record, replaying his cruel words on a loop, "I'm divorcing you. The house is sold. Lenora and I need the money." But what chilled her wasn't the declaration itself. She'd vaguely sensed this day coming, with his late nights reeking of unfamiliar perfume and unexplained business trips, but the giggle in the background, a feminine voice as soft as velvet yet sharp as a blade, slicing through the space between them. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from a simmering rage rising within her, like a fire spreading from a forgotten ember. Andrew kept talking, his voice smooth and smug, as if he'd just closed a perfect deal. "You don't need to worry, Orrible. I've handled everything. Lenora deserves better than that rat hole." Rat hole? That house, the little home with a balcony draped in bougainvillea, where she'd spent hours pruning plants, where she and Andrew had painted the walls together amid laughter on a rainy afternoon, was now a rat hole to him? She wanted to scream, to smash the phone and silence his voice forever, but she didn't. Instead, she took a deep breath, letting the cold air flood her lungs, soothing the blaze scorching her chest. "Congratulations," she said, her voice icy and unshaken, as if she were wearing him a lottery win rather than acknowledging the dagger he'd plunged into her heart. Andrew paused for a second, perhaps surprised she didn't wail or beg as he'd expected. "You just don't get it, do you?" he sneered, his familiar condescending tone, once charming to her, dripping with disdain. "You've always been so slow, Orrible. I've been bored out of my mind with this dull life with you for ages." His words stung like a slap, but they also snapped her into clarity like never before. She closed her eyes, picturing Andrew in her mind, the tousled blonde hair she'd once run her fingers through, the dazzling smile that used to make her heart skip, and those blue eyes now surely gleaming with triumph. But this time, she saw no love in that image, only deceit, selfishness, and a man she no longer recognized. "Then why didn't you say so sooner?" she asked, her voice soft but edged with a sharpness hidden beneath velvet. "So I wouldn't have wasted my time with someone like you?" Andrew laughed, a dry, hollow sound crackling through the phone speaker, drawing curious glances from a few coffee patrons. "Keep talking tough," he said. "But you'll need to find a new place to crash soon. The money's mine now, and Lenora's picking out furniture for the new house. You're done, Orrible." There it was again, Lenora's laugh, louder this time, closer, as if she were pressing her ear to the phone to savor every second of Orrible's collapse. "Oh, tell her to pick nice curtains." Lenora chimed in, her tone syrupy but venomous. "I like red, blood red." Orrible's stomach churned, not from fear, but from a deep, visceral disgust. She pictured Lenora, perhaps a tall, slender woman with curly hair, red lips, standing beside Andrew with a smug grin. But she didn't linger on that image. "Thanks for the tip," she replied evenly. "But I think you'll need curtains more than I will." She hung up before Andrew could say another word, the phone screen going dark like a door slamming shut. The coffee suddenly felt eerily quiet, save for the murmurs of other patrons and the rhythmic hiss of the espresso machine. Orrible looked down at her hands, still trembling slightly, but now she felt a strange strength surging from within. Andrew thought he'd won, that he could erase 5 years of their marriage with a single call and a few insults. He thought she'd crumble, beg him to come back, as she'd done in past arguments when she'd compromised to keep the peace. But not this time. She wasn't the old Orbill anymore, the woman who'd ignored the cracks in their marriage, clinging to the naive hope that Andrew would change. She stood, her high heels clicking decisively against the wooden floor, leaving the broken cup and coffee stain behind like a silent declaration of war. A waiter hurried over, saying something, but she just shook her head, her eyes glinting with a resolve she hadn't fully grasped yet. Andrew had made a grave mistake underestimating her. He didn't know that house wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was her sweat, her dreams, the sleepless nights she'd worked to pay off debts while he stumbled home drunk from nights out with friends. And Lenora, she could laugh, could dream of her red curtains, but Orbill wouldn't let them strip away what she'd bled to build. Orbill stepped out of the coffee, the cold wind whipping through her long hair, tangling strands as chaotic as her mind felt in that moment. The fading light of the afternoon stretched across the bustling street, but to her, everything seemed muted, drowned out by the echo of Andrew's voice in her head, smug, triumphant, like a man who'd just landed the final blow in a fight she didn't even know she was part of. She gripped her purse tightly, nails digging into her palms, leaving crescent-shaped red marks. But then, amid the turmoil, a spark flared in her mind, not hope, but a memory as sharp as a freshly honed blade. The house Andrew claimed he'd sold wasn't theirs to lose anymore. She stopped dead in the flow of pedestrians, her high heels grinding against the pavement, and a slow, almost dangerous smile spread across her lips. She recalled a night a few months back, sitting in their living room under the hazy glow of a table lamp, surrounded by refinancing paperwork. Andrew, as usual, had been distracted, pen in hand, eyes glued to his phone, muttering something about letting her handle all this boring paperwork. She'd meticulously arranged everything, negotiating a lower interest rate with the bank, reviewing every line of the contract. But what she hadn't anticipated, and what now gleamed like a precious gem in her grasp, was a small power of attorney document he'd signed without bothering to read. "Yeah, sign it, I trust you," he'd said then, his voice dripping with fake sweetness she'd once mistaken for trust. That document gave her full control over the house, not just her name on the deed, but the authority to decide every transaction tied to it. Andrew, in his arrogance and carelessness, had unknowingly handed her the knife. Orbill laughed, a hoarse, dry sound that cut through the noisy street. It drew a glance from a passerby, their eyes flickering with curiosity and concern, but she didn't care. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not from pain but from a breathless mix of astonishment and exhilaration. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, leaving a smudged trail of mascara like war paint across her pale face. "He doesn't even know," she whispered to herself, her voice trembling but laced with triumph. The anger from the earlier call morphed into something stronger, a sense of power she'd never felt in the 5 years she'd lived in Andrew's shadow. She was no longer the fragile woman watching him strut through their life. She was the one holding the pieces, and this game had only just begun. She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen to find Linda's number, her lawyer, her best friend, the only person she trusted completely right now. When Linda picked up, her warm, familiar voice came through. "Orbill? What's wrong? You sound off." Orbill didn't beat around the bush. "Andrew just called. He said he sold the house and is divorcing me to be with some woman named Lenora." There was a beat of silence on the other end, then Linda let out a quiet curse, just enough to make Orbill smile again. "But here's the thing," she continued, her voice now sharp as a blade unsheathed. "The house is in my name. And more, he signed a power of attorney giving me full control over it. He never read it." Linda burst into laughter, a bright, thrilled sound. "Oh my God, Orbill, you just struck gold in a pile of trash. He can't sell that house without your consent, that document is ironclad. If he's taken money, that's fraud, and you could send him to jail." Linda's words poured fuel on the fire raging inside Orbill. Her heart pounded, not from fear but from a rush of adrenaline flooding her veins. She pictured Andrew's face when he realized his mistake, those blue eyes wide with panic, that smug smile twisting into a desperate grimace. She could almost hear him pleading, "Orbill, can we talk about this?" But this time, she wouldn't cave. Not like before, when she conceded to avoid conflict, when she'd swallowed his lies to preserve a home that had long since rotted. That power of attorney wasn't just a piece of paper, it was proof of Andrew's recklessness, and more importantly, the key to breaking free from the cage he'd trapped her in for years. She stepped into a quieter corner of the street, leaning against a rough brick wall, feeling the chill seep through her thin coat. Her mind raced with possibilities. If Andrew had already taken money from a buyer, as he'd boasted, he wouldn't just lose the house, he'd face legal consequences. And Lenora? What would she do when she realized the man she'd chosen wasn't a prince on a white horse, but a failure teetering on the edge of ruin? Orrible closed her eyes, letting the scene play out vividly in her mind, Andrew in a wrinkled suit, sweat beading on his forehead, stammering to Lenora that it was all a misunderstanding. She opened her eyes, a cold glint flashing in them. "He thinks I'm done," she said to Linda over the phone, her voice now steady as stone. "But I'm the one who's going to end this." Linda didn't hesitate. "Good. I'll check the paperwork and start drafting a warning letter. What's your next move?" Orrible didn't waver. "I want him scared. I want him to know he can't touch me without paying a price." She hung up, straightening up, her hair billowing in the wind like a victory flag. The house wasn't just property, it was her soul, the days she'd worked herself to exhaustion to make it a home, the dreams she'd quietly woven. Andrew had tried to steal it, but he hadn't realized his own arrogance had handed her the weapon to fight back. The sunset descended, painting the street where Orrible stood in hues of red, the light brushing her face like war paint. She was no longer the trembling woman who'd left the coffee, nor merely the one who'd discovered a hidden ace up her sleeve. She was a warrior who'd chosen her weapon and was ready to step into a battle Andrew could never have foreseen. The phone in her hand still felt warm from her call with Linda, her friend's final words echoing, "You want him scared? I'll make him tremble." Orrible smiled, not the gentle smile of old, but a cold, sharp curve, like a blade freshly drawn from its sheath. She walked into a small nearby park, settling onto an old wooden bench, letting the rustling leaves and cool air temper the heat surging within her. But that calm was only skin-deep. Inside, she was plotting, step by step, cut by cut, to sever the ties Andrew thought still bound her. She opened her email on her phone, fingers darting across the screen to find the scanned power of attorney Linda had asked her to send. That document was no longer just a legal paper, it was the flame she'd used to burn Andrew's arrogance to ashes. Linda texted back moments later, "Got it. I'm drafting a warning letter to Andrew, short, sharp, enough to let him know you're not playing." "What about the buyers?" Orrible typed a reply without hesitation, "Find them. Tell them the truth. I want them on my side." She hit send, then leaned back, gazing at the swaying tree branches. The buyers, faceless strangers Andrew had deceived, would be her unexpected allies. If they'd already paid him, they'd be furious to learn the deal was a hollow shell. And knowing Andrew's penchant for flaunting, she was sure he'd already spent some of it, maybe on a lavish dinner with Lenora or a luxury trinket to impress her. The thought made her laugh, a small, cutting sound like a cracked bell breaking the stillness. Less than an hour later, Linda called back, her voice a mix of excitement and gravity. "Orrible, you sitting down? I tracked down the buyers through a contact at a real estate firm. They're an older couple, paid 20% upfront in cash to Andrew's personal account. They're livid because they haven't gotten valid paperwork." Orrible gripped the phone tighter, her heart pounding like a war drum. "Do they know the truth yet?" she asked, her voice low but weighted. "Not yet," Linda replied. "But I've set a meeting with them tomorrow morning. I'll show them the power of attorney and prove Andrew had no right to sell. If you're okay with it, I'll suggest they team up, demand their money back from him, or sue if needed." Orrible didn't waver. "Do it. And add that I'll refund them if they back off, but only after Andrew pays up first." Linda laughed over the line. "You're ruthless. He'll have to dig dirt to pay, because I bet he's blown most of it already." She rose from the bench, her steps quickening, each one like a hammer driving nails into the coffin of Andrew's scheme. Linda went on, the warning letters sent to Andrew via email. I wrote, Mr. Andrew, your unauthorized sale of property you don't own is fraudulent. Mrs. Orrible, the legal owner, demands you cancel the transaction and return the funds within 48 hours, or face legal action. Short, but enough to make him sweat. Orrible pictured Andrew opening the email, his smug grin fading, hands trembling as he read each line. Good, she said, her voice now carrying an almost cheerful edge. But add this, if you think this is a joke, try keeping the money and see. Linda chuckled. Done. Resented just now. What's next? Orrible paused, looking up at the sky, now darkened with only a few stars twinkling like silent witnesses. Prepare the divorce papers, she said firmly. I want everything ready when he falls. She hung up, a jolt of electricity racing down her spine. Night had fallen, but to Orrible, it wasn't darkness, it was the stage for the drama she was directing. She imagined Andrew right now, maybe lounging in some cheap rented apartment with Lenora, bragging about his perfect plan. She could almost smell Lenora's expensive perfume in the air, hear the clink of wine glasses as they toasted their victory. But she knew that joy wouldn't last. Linda's letter would hit like a velvet-wrapped bullet, piercing Andrew's confident facade, leaving him reeling and exposed to a truth he couldn't escape. Orrible stepped into a small bakery on her way home, buying a chocolate pastry, not for comfort, but as a reward. She sat at a wooden table near the window, taking a bite, letting the bittersweet flavor melt in her mouth. This wasn't weakness, it was a declaration that she could still save her life, even as Andrew tried to erase everything she'd built. Linda texted again, the buyers are in. They're furious Andrew scammed them, sent him a demand letter tonight. He's getting hit with 2 pincers at once. Orrible sipped her water, her eyes glinting with a dangerous spark. 2 pincers, one from her, one from those he'd conned, would squeeze Andrew until he had nowhere left to run. As she left the bakery, she walked with the poise of a queen reclaiming her throne. The night wind blew harder, carrying the scent of coming rain, but she wasn't afraid. She'd turned her pain into a plan, the surprise of the power of attorney into a sharpened blade. Andrew might think he was in control, but she was the one steering the wheel, and she'd drive it straight through the ashes of his pride. Linda had set the legal machinery in motion, and Orrible knew that in just a few hours, Andrew would feel the full weight of a mistake he'd never seen coming. Rain began to fall as Orrible stepped into the house, no longer the old haven, but now a battlefield she'd prepared herself to command. The droplets tapped a rhythm on the windows, like drums signaling the curtain call of a drama about to end. She stood in the living room, her high heels leaving wet marks on the wooden floor, her icy gaze sweeping over familiar objects now steeped in estrangement, the armchair Andrew loved, the abstract painting she'd hated but kept for his sake. Linda had done her part, the warning letter and the buyer's cooperation were in motion, and now it was time for Orrible to deliver the final blow. The sound of keys rattled at the door, and she took a deep breath, standing tall like a statue, ready to face the storm named Andrew. The door swung open, and Andrew stormed in, his soaked coat clinging to him, his face flushed with fury. Behind him was Lenora, tall and slim, her curly hair plastered wet against her shoulders, red lips curved in a smug smile. They brought with them the heavy scent of perfume and suffocating arrogance. Andrew flung a crumpled paper, Linda's letter, onto the floor, his voice roaring, "What the hell is this game, Orrible? You can't stop me! The house is sold, the money's mine, and you can't do a damn thing." Lenora crossed her arms, smirking, "Exactly. We're here to take our stuff, this place is ours now." Orrible didn't move, only tilted her head, her eyes glinting like a blade under the dim light. "Welcome to my house," she said, her voice soft but frigid, "but you're mistaken." She stepped to the dining table, where a stack of documents waited, and slid them toward Andrew. "Read it," she said, her voice now sharp as shattered glass. "The power of attorney you signed, you remember, don't you? Or were you too busy texting her to bother?" Andrew snatched it, flipping through the pages, his face draining from red to ashen. Lenora frowned, stepping closer. "What is this? You said it was all settled." Orrible turned to her, smiling for the first time that night, a smile that made Lenora recoil. "Oh, he didn't tell you?" He sold a house that isn't his. I'm the sole owner, and his deal? Null and void. Andrew threw the papers down, shouting, "You're making this up. I've got the money, you can't touch me." Lenora grabbed his arm, her voice trembling but clinging to confidence. "Don't worry, babe. I'm pregnant, she won't dare do anything. We've got everything." Orrible threw her head back and laughed, the sound booming over the rain, stunning them both. "Pregnant? Fantastic. Congratulations, Lenora, because now you'll be raising a kid with a broke loser." She stepped closer to Andrew, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "The buyers know you scammed them. They want their money, and if you don't pay, they'll sue." "Where's the cash, Andrew?" "In her purse?" Lenora dropped his arm, eyes wide. "You said you had the money. You promised me a new house." Andrew stammered, "Lenora." She didn't let him finish. Lenora spun around, her curls flying, and bolted for the door, yelling, "I'm not part of this. Deal with it yourself." The door slammed shut, leaving Andrew standing there, drenched and broken. He sank to his knees, hands clutching his head. "Orrible, please. I was wrong. Don't do this." She bent down, locking eyes with him, rain from her hair dripping onto his face like tears he didn't deserve. "You laughed when you thought I was done," she said, her voice a symphony of pain and triumph. "Now laugh, Andrew. Laugh for me." He didn't laugh. He sobbed, choked cries blending with the rain. Orrible stood, turning her back, leaving him on the floor, a wreckage of the arrogance he'd built. She'd won, not just legally, but by shattering the world he'd once thought untouchable. The rain continued to fall steadily outside the window, but inside the house, only Andrew's labored breathing rose from the cold wooden floor. Orrible stood there, her shadow stretching long under the soft yellow lamplight, like a victorious goddess emerging from the storm. Andrew remained on his knees, head bowed, rainwater dripping from his coat into small puddles that reflected the faint light like shattered fragments of his broken pride. His sobs were now just background noise, a mournful tune she no longer cared to hear. Lenora had fled, leaving him alone in the wreckage he'd created, but Orrible knew the war wasn't over. This wasn't just about proving she was right, it was about reclaiming everything, piece by piece, and putting an end to Andrew's place in her life for good. She walked to the bookshelf, where Linda had overnight a set of documents, divorce papers, drafted with lines as cold and cutting as the blade she'd once imagined. She picked them up, feeling their weight in her hands, not a burden, but a liberation. "Get up, Andrew," she said, her voice no longer icy but calm, like a lake after a tempest. He lifted his head, red-rimmed eyes meeting hers with a flicker of fragile hope, but she didn't let him cling to delusions. She set the papers on the table in front of him, pointing to the final line, "Sign it. Or tomorrow morning, Linda takes this to court with fraud charges. Your choice." Andrew trembled, his hand brushing the pen she offered, fingers stiff as if refusing to accept reality. "Orrible," he whispered, voice cracking. "We can fix this. I know I messed up, but..." "Fix it?" She cut him off, her voice flaring like a fire held back too long. "How do you fix selling my house, laughing in my face, and parading her in here like I'm the disposable one?" She leaned down, locking eyes with him, letting him see there was no mercy left in her gaze. "You can't fix anything, Andrew. You destroyed it, and now I'm the one ending it." He blinked, tears rolling down his cheeks, but she didn't look away. She wanted him to feel it, the helplessness, the loss, just as she had when his voice came through the phone that day. Andrew took the pen, his hand shaking so badly the signature scrawled messily across the page. Each stroke was a cut, not into her, but into the last thread tying him to the life they'd shared. When he set the pen down, she snatched the paper, checking the signature with the scrutiny of someone who no longer trusted anything from him. "Done," she said, her voice now soft but firm, like the click of a locking door. "Now get out. Don't make me call the police." Andrew stood, legs wobbling like a drunk's, his eyes sweeping the house one last time, not with nostalgia, but with the regret of a loser. He staggered to the door, silent, his figure disappearing into the dark rain. Orrible locked the door behind him, the sound of the bolt ringing like a proclamation. She turned back, gazing at the house now wholly hers, not just on paper, but in every breath, every corner. She walked to the coffee table, where an old wooden box sat quietly. Opening it, she pulled out a bottle of red wine she'd saved for a special occasion, and now that occasion was her victory. She poured it into a glass, the deep red liquid rippling like the blood of a past freshly cleansed. She raised the glass, whispering to herself, "To me, the survivor." A sip slid down her throat, warm and bitter, but this time, the bitterness didn't hurt, it was the taste of freedom. She sank into a chair, legs finally relaxing after a long day, and for the first time in months, she felt unburdened. Andrew was no longer a ghost haunting her, he was a fading memory, a mistake she'd overcome. The house, with its scratched floors and dim lamplight, was now her fortress, a place where she'd rebuild from the ground up. This victory wasn't just legal, it was proof she was stronger than he, or even she, had ever believed. The morning light slipped through the curtains, casting pale golden streaks across the wooden floor that last night bore the wet footprints of Andrew's defeat. Orrible stood in the living room, the wineglass from the evening before still on the table, its dried red stain like a final punctuation mark on the past. The house was silent, no more sobs or the heavy breathing of a broken man, just the chirping of birds from the balcony, a melody welcoming a new day meant for her alone. She'd locked the door behind Andrew, his memory now a faint shadow, but she knew true victory wasn't just in casting him out. It was in transforming this place, and herself, into something new, unshackled from the scars he'd left behind. She stepped onto the balcony, where the bougainvillea pots Andrew once called useless swayed in the breeze, their vivid red petals like the fire she'd harbored in her heart these past days. She picked up a watering can, each drop falling to the soil like a whisper of healing. This wasn't just about tending plants, it was how she tended to herself, bit by bit, washing away the years she'd let herself wither under his shadow. Back inside, she opened a closet and pulled out a can of ivory paint, the color of beginnings. She wouldn't hire anyone for this. She wanted to wield the brush herself, each stroke a severing of the invisible ties that once bound her to Andrew, to the empty promises he never kept. The sound of the brush gliding over the walls was steady, the faint scent of paint lingering in the air like the fragrance of freedom. She painted over the scratches Andrew left from a drunken outburst, over the dull gray patches he'd chosen that she'd always despised. Each layer was a declaration, "This is mine." When the final wall was done, she stepped back, sweat rolling down her forehead, hands streaked with paint, but her heart lighter than ever. She hung a small painting on the wall, a phoenix rising from flames, something she'd drawn during the loneliest nights of their marriage. Now, it was no longer a symbol of pain, it was her, reborn from the ashes. Her phone buzzed, Linda's cheerful text lighting up the screen, "The buyers just called. They're suing Andrew, he's scrambling to pay them back. How are you?" Orrible smiled, typing back, "Better than ever. Thanks." She set the phone down, unwilling to be drawn back into Andrew's chaos. But that message, confirmation he was reaping what he'd sown, was an unexpected gift, like a final sprinkle of sugar on her victory cake. She didn't laugh aloud or cheer, she just felt a deep, quiet peace, as if a breeze had swept away the last dust clinging to her soul. She stepped onto the balcony again, cradling a mug of hot tea, steam rising to mingle with the morning air. The city sprawled before her, skyscrapers glinting in the sunlight, beckoning her toward a new chapter. She took a sip, the subtle sweetness spreading across her tongue, and for the first time in years, she felt truly alive, not living for someone else, not living to please Andrew or prop up a marriage long dead. She whispered to the breeze, "I did it." No one heard, but she didn't need witnesses. This was her victory, silent but resounding in every heartbeat. As the sun climbed higher, Orrible turned back inside, her eyes shining with newfound confidence. The house now mirrored her, clean, bright, and brimming with life. She knew she wouldn't stay here forever, one day, she'd find a new place, free of the past's shadow. But for now, she savored every moment in the space she'd reclaimed, every breath of freedom she'd cultivated herself. Andrew had lost, not just the house, but because he never grasped the strength of the woman he'd underestimated. And Orrible, she'd found herself, fierce, radiant, and free, like the phoenix on her wall. Orible's story conveys profound messages. Inner strength can triumph over adversity, perseverance brings freedom, and there's immense value in rediscovering oneself after pain. A key lesson is that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, even when age might stir doubt. For older individuals, the story serves as a reminder that life continually offers chances to reshape happiness. Just as Orible repainted her house, you can redraw the canvas of your life. Trust in your lived experience, seek support from loved ones, and bravely let go of what no longer serves you. Freedom and peace don't depend on the years, but on the resolve to live true to yourself.